What is up, my dear language learning masters? Welcome to Natural Podcast and welcome to a new interview of the Language Input Podcast. And today I'm gonna have Cathy from Australia, and she's gonna tell us about her experience teaching Indonesian in Australia, and about the difference between teaching Indonesian with the traditional grammar approach versus teaching with comprehensible input, the difference it made in her own journey and the difference that's made in her students as well. So as usual, hope you enjoy it and as much as I did. And yeah, let's get right into it. Let's go. Hi, Cathy, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you on, like I said. And yeah, as usual, let's just start by, just tell us whatever comes to your mind about yourself when it comes to your language experience as a language teacher and student yourself.
So you'd like me to introduce myself?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I teach Indonesian and I've taught Indonesian to students from 4 years old up to probably, 14, 15-year-olds. So, and I've also taught adults, but I just dip in the ocean with that. I've spoken Indonesian basically all my life. My father was an interpreter and translator in the Navy.
Right.
And he was learning Indonesian when I was learning to speak. So my sister and I joined in on his lessons. He was doing the audiolingual method where listen and repeat. And it was great homework for two young girls who were who weren't allowed to do anything else but join in the lessons. So that's basically my history of my language and my teaching. I've been teaching language for, I think I started in, 2002, teaching language. I mean, I was a classroom teacher before that. And I've been a TPRS teacher since 2014.
Okay. So the first 12 years of your teaching career, did you use just traditional grammar?
Yep, I taught exactly as I'd been taught. And then I went on. We have here in Australia this amazing system where for every 10 years of service, you get 3 months paid leave. And I know, it's awesome. And so 1 year in 2013, I took 6 months on half pay and traveled around Indonesia. And I remember sitting down and just doing that, thinking that we all go through at one point, and we say, look, I've been teaching language for so many years and none of my kids speak Indonesian. They forget it as soon as they walk out of the classroom. Mm-hmm. How can I change that? And I spent a lot of that 6 months just considering and thinking about that. And when I came back, I did some serious researching and discovered the wonderful Martina Becks. And she was the beginning of it all. And then I joined Ben Slavick's website, and through that he introduced me to Katarina Greenberg. And I don't know if you've heard of her. She is an amazing teacher, and she's been my mentor from the start. And she is she's just an incredible. I've been very blessed to have her as my mentor. Mm-hmm. Up until even this year, she's still mentoring me to this day. Yeah, she's great.
Yeah, we can always learn more, right? Yeah.
I know, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but it's interesting because I think that's been the case for a lot of us. I mean, doing the transition between learning or teaching languages the traditional way, and just realizing that there might be something wrong here. Like in my case, it was when I first came to Poland and I started learning the language. I live in Poland now. So when I first came to Poland, I remember, because at that time, the only thing I knew was the traditional grammar approach. So when I started learning the language, I went to a language academy, and the classes were just grammar, And so it was my personal experience that made me realize, I think there's something wrong here. Because for a native Spanish speaker, I had English or French before, and it obviously didn't work either, but you can sort of fool yourself a little bit because of the similarities between languages,
Yeah.
But when I started learning Polish, which is a completely different language,
yeah, totally,
funny grammar, if you will, so I started to realize that, wait a minute. So every time I'm walking down the street and I want to talk to someone, I need to think about all the different grammar scenarios, because it's a language with, I think they're called cases or declensions in English. I believe Latin that has different, I think they're called cases. So there's a different ending to words depending on the function.
And Breton is the same, isn't it?
Okay.
And so is Indonesian.
So I started thinking, okay, so depending on the specific function of this word in the sentence, I need to use a different case.
Correct.
Right,
yes.
okay.
Yes.
And if it's masculine, feminine, or neutral, I need to use a different ending.
Oh, well, luckily we don't have masculine, feminine in Indonesian. So that's one complication removed.
Yeah, but the bottom line is, by the time I come up with the right answer, the other person is long gone. Right? just saying goodbye from their house. I started, this can't be the way to learn a language.
No, exactly. So that was when it all gelled for you, was it?
That's when it clicked for me, yeah. That's when I started my own research journey as well, like reading Stephen Krashen's books and going to Ajan,
Yes, wasn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that's why, back to Ajan and to other conferences or experiences, experiencing the language class as a student yourself is really powerful.
It's incredible, isn't it? Because I grew up speaking Indonesian, not fluently, but my fluency's improved with time. But because I grew up, and when I went to school, because I went to school and learned Indonesian at high school as well, I knew the language and I knew it felt right. I could say it in my head and it either was felt right or it felt wrong. So I had huge advantage. And all it did was cement a lot of these things that you're talking about, where you have a base word and then you got the prefixes and suffixes, and all it did was cement why I used this prefix at this point and this suffix at another point. All it did was, basically join the dots for me. But when I was in, at Agen and I did Breton, oh my goodness, it was this light bulb moment for me. Like, this is what it actually feels like for my students when I'm rabbiting on in Indonesian too fast and it's not comprehensible. Yes, it's the best experience at all, isn't it? It's so humbling.
Yeah, especially if it's a language that you're studying from scratch, that you know nothing about.
Absolutely, because I don't speak Spanish. I only speak Indonesian and English. So, it was just really powerful experience.
Yeah, what it is. Yeah, I was thinking about another example, but I forgot. Anyway, no, you talked about what feels right. I just remember that. It's so funny because I remember I used to ask my Polish friends here, so why do you change that in this specific sentence? Right before starting my research journey, of course. And all the time they would tell me, I don't know, they just sound right.
Exactly.
And same thing when people ask me about Spanish, like their favorite is the subjunctive. And I'm like, whatever. So why are you using it here? And I'm like, because it sounds right to me.
Exactly.
Yeah, and sometimes if it doesn't happen anymore because of, I'm putting out the content. So people who are interested in Spanish, in learning Spanish and come to me, they already know. They know what to expect. They know I'm not going to give them traditional grammar studies. So I don't need to do any convincing, right? But especially at the beginning, people asking me questions about verb tenses that I don't really know myself. And I'm a native speaker, and they ask me a question about the language, and I need to stop and think about it for a good couple of minutes to come up with an answer that I just made up.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yes. Just because you speak a language fluently does not automatically mean you understand and can verbalize all the reason, the grammar rules. We're probably, a native speaker is probably the worst person to ask.
Yep. Yeah. But I've talked about it, and I'm starting to think that it can actually it can even get in the way, like studying grammar.
I agree. Yeah. I agree. It does. It's that noise. It just adds to the noise that that's in your head when you're trying to communicate.
Right, because I want to ask you about that when it comes to Indonesian, because when you started learning Indonesian, it was a sort of the natural way, right? Because you were a little girl and you weren't really worried about, paying conscious attention to form and so on. But then when you went to high school, I guess that was grammar all over again.
100%. It was 100% grammar. Yes, and it was that grill and drill, let's fill in the gap and let's practice this grammar structure. And it was incredibly, well, it was boring for everyone else. I loved it because it was easy.
Right.
Yeah. And I also had a father who was heavily invested in my language learning, so which was an added bonus, whereas it's the total flip for most of my students. Most of my students' parents, it's probably the subject that they place the least importance on. Whereas for my father, it was the only subject that he was interested in. So because he could, engage with me on it, and and we had people visiting all the time, so I could practice my Indonesian as well. So
But my question is, when you started learning in high school, did you feel like, I don't know if you were aware of that at that time, but did you feel like it was getting in the way for you? What I mean is you could already speak the language before those classes, right? So
I understood it. I was at that point, my fluency was at the point where I understood 100%, but the output was low because,
that's how it works.
Oh yeah, true. I guess I was a typical heritage speaker, if you like, but using the American term. Where, I guess really in retrospect, I was, because I couldn't write. I could read and I could understand, but my writing was pretty poor because I didn't know how to spell, or even though it's very phonetic language. It was quite interesting. I hadn't thought about that before.
Yeah, because it's my theory that I'm working on recently. Since I started doing my research and I started learning other languages completely with no grammar at all, I'm noticing differences that's why I'm starting to think that it gets in the way, because if you've had some traditional grammar study, when you're about to say something, you're still paying attention to form.
Absolutely.
Like subconsciously, because you're trying to recall those specific structures that you learn consciously, and it gets in the way because when you've acquired a language without that, you have that to sort of rely on, right? So what that comes out of your mouth, it's natural. And it's so you don't have that sort of grammar knowledge to rely on, so you don't stop when you're about to speak.
No, but when you overthink it, when you overthink it, then you start to question yourself, and you actually have to really, what's the word, force yourself to stop overthinking it and just let it come naturally.
Right.
That's what I remember doing at high school, is like, because when I overthought it, I doubted myself, and that's when I started to make mistakes. But trying to squeeze that round peg into a square hole. But when I just let it go and just did it without thinking, I got everything right. But when I overthought it, I had errors.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like it even gets to the point that I've noticed it. I mean, obviously afterwards, but I've noticed it several times that I'm about to reply to some specific conversation or whatever the setting, and like my instinct is to respond to that without thinking about it.
Yeah.
But then I stopped to think about it because of that,
Yes.
because of that conscious study. And the funny thing is, the first time around was actually the correct one. But then I get messed up because I start thinking about different possibilities. And and I've noticed that with my students as well. Sometimes they just respond whatever comes to their mind first. And many times that's actually correct, but then they start overthinking it, and and it's not that they say it a different way, but they start thinking about different options. It happens a lot.
Yes, it does. Yeah. Yes, that about sums up my experience with learning Spanish, actually.
Right. And do you have any of your students? Did you have the same students before teaching with comprehensible input and so on, and afterwards?
So I did it. Yes,
so
I did.
Uh-huh.
I did. And I don't remember their proficiency. Yeah, I know that changed, but I just remember that engagement went through the roof. And the feeling of success, they just felt successful significantly more afterwards. That's what I vividly remember, because that was in 2014, 2015, so it's quite a ways, a long time ago now, and those kids have moved on. But yeah, it blew me away.
Right. I guess before that was the traditional setting in which students are just sitting down and looking.
It was. I remember doing flashcards every lesson and just trying to, and they were all nouns, so they were hopelessly useless, because, and also words that they would never use if they ever did go to Indonesia. So that's what I remember, and lots of just busy work, just to keep them busy, but not really, it wasn't useful in the terms of proficiency or fluency.
Just so it feels like they're learning in the eyes of the school, their parents, and so on.
That's right. But one of the first things I remember when I did first transition to TCI was the number of parents that stopped me in the yard at school pickup to say, "Oh my goodness, our kids are talking Indonesian at the dinner table and we have no idea what they're saying." That was awesome to think that, am I finally giving them the language to communicate?
Like, we hope you're not teaching them curse words or things like that, right?
No, I think the worst word I ever taught them was the word for poo. And hey, there's only so many ways you can use that word.
Right. Because how much time do they get in Indonesian, like throughout their education?
It really depends on the school that you're teaching. There's no standard formula. At the school I started at, they were getting 100 minutes a week, so 2 lots of 50-minute lessons, which I didn't think was enough, but they actually did quite well on that. The school I'm now teaching at, they get 60 minutes a week, so it's 1 60-minute lesson a week, and it's incredible what a difference it makes having only 1 60-minute lesson as opposed to 2 50-minute lessons. But they're still progressing and still making making huge steps in that time.
They're still getting comprehensible input, they need. It's just
absolutely
less time.
Yeah.
But is it the second language in Australia in terms of learning, or Spanish, French?
I don't know. I'd say Chinese would be a lot. Indonesian actually as a second language is the numbers of schools teaching it at the moment is dropping so quickly we can't keep up with it. It's just incredible how quickly it's it's losing popularity, not popularity, but unfortunately the government is really promoting STEM and STEAM at the moment. Do you have those terms?
What's
So
that?
it's science, technology, engineering, and maths.
Oh, right, yeah, right, yeah.
Yeah. So schools are given massive amounts of money to build these labs or whatever, and so that's definitely the flavour of the month. And unfortunately, the value of languages is not not high at the moment. So schools are deliberately not replacing language teachers when they leave, so that they can find a STEM teacher instead. It's happening quite. It's quite appalling actually how common that is. Yeah. So, but I would say of all the languages, off the top of my head, I'd say Chinese is the one that's Mandarin Chinese is the most popular, and they have a huge financial support and huge support from the Chinese Association, the Australian Chinese Association. So yeah,
But the demand is still there for parents or students, I guess, or
for what?
the demand for Indonesian. I mean, is it still there, or?
I'd say it's always going to be here, because diplomatically there has to be a demand. It's our closest neighbour.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
So and if you look at our government and the amount of times they've offended the Indonesian government through not understanding the intercultural, not appreciating the differences culturally, but also not having the language, having to rely on interpreters to translate messages, you would think it would be more highly valued than it is, but unfortunately it's not.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm curious as well, like students or parents who want their kids to learn Indonesian, is it like because of the geographical proximity that, I mean, like those who are interested in Indonesian, do they want to be interpreters, or do they want to just travel to Indonesia, or?
It's mainly travel.
Okay.
That's the main appeal of learning Indonesian, because if you go to Indonesia, and most people who do go only to Bali,
right.
Most people in Bali are speak quite a good amount of English, because English is one of the languages you learn in Indonesia. I think it's not compulsory, but I think you learn English up until you can start choosing your subjects in secondary. So most people speak, some English, but in Bali they speak quite a lot. But the appeal of learning Indonesian means you can get off that beaten track. You can go and explore all the other islands, and which is where you'll experience the real Indonesia. Bali's so touristy now that it's quite spoiled in my eyes. I mean, it's still beautiful, but it's not, not as it was.
Yeah, like half of the island is Australia, right?
I know, and they're not the type of Australian you're proud to be associated with, unfortunately. Yes.
Yeah, and when it comes to other languages that you're trying to learn, or that you try to learn in the past, you mentioned Spanish.
Yeah, I did Spanish for a bit with Margarita Perez Garcia. Yes, so during COVID, she organised some online lessons with quite a few of us, which they were brilliant.
Yes.
Yeah, but I've just moved to Sydney, and so, it was last year when I moved into the country and I didn't have internet. So, and being at a new school and no internet to start with, I actually didn't continue, but yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed that.
So, and that was your first experience with Spanish, like as an adult, or did
my first real experience. I mean, Ibu Ann, obviously, or Anne McKelvey, is a Spanish teacher. And so she's done a few Spanish demos for us with our conferences, workshops that we've held here. So yeah, I've learned a little bit through her, but with Margarita, it was, yeah, that was my first true, what do you call it? Proper, if you like.
Was it for a long time, or
how
long did it last?
I think it went, I don't know how long it went for. Maybe it wasn't, maybe just a year, maybe just less than a year. Yeah. And we met randomly whenever, like whether it was in holidays, I think we met 3 or 4 times a week. And then during the rest of the year, we just met, I can't remember now whether it was every other weekend or, but I can't remember now, but it was great. Yeah.
So, okay. So that was a lot of input, I guess. So, yeah. And how do you feel about your Spanish after that? Like, can you understand easy resources, easy content, or?
No, I can't. No. And it's quite funny, actually, because a lot of the beginner or novice level Spanish material is obviously designed for an American context where they have Spanish all around them, and there's a lot of words that Americans already know because they're surrounded by Spanish, and it's totally incomprehensible to me. So yeah, you have to start, like I am right at the bottom, and I'm sure if I got started again, I'd pick up a lot of it. But I can get the gist of, like I love watching Anne's videos. Have you seen her YouTube channel? She has a Spanish YouTube channel for her juniors.
She talked about,
yeah, and I love watching those because they help. I can follow those because they're comprehensible for me anyway, and they help. So, and if I do get stuck on a word, I just message her and say, "What does this mean?" And she gets back to me immediately. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's also important to understand that it takes longer than most people think.
Oh, exactly. Yeah,
I mean, again, I keep saying that the good news is you're not going to have to consciously memorize words or learn grammar structures and so on. So it's actually going to be fun, right? But it just takes a lot of input.
It does. And it does. I remember somebody saying, and I can't remember who it was now. Oh, it was Bill Van Patten saying that the language teacher we're mainly giving our learners the key to open the door, and they go through the door if they, then they have the key to go through and to actually finish their language learning, if you like. So I like to think of the fact that I give my students the bare bones for them to communicate, and should they go to Indonesia, should they be lucky enough to go to Indonesia, that'll be just the key for them. If they live there, for example, then they will then just blossom and flourish from there onwards. Yeah. I always remember that analogy, and I think it was quite apt.
It's a nice one. Yeah, I had Bill on the podcast, and it was a wonderful episode.
Yes, it was. Yes.
Like he's got so much knowledge, and when it comes to the language acquisition process, yeah,
it is.
Yeah, that's right. It just getting students to a point in which they can actually continue the journey on their own.
Exactly. And the confidence.
Yeah, of course. Once you get them to a point in which they can start reading books or watching, even if it's just cartoons or whatever it is, right? That's what I do myself as a language student. Like once I get to a point in which I can start understanding more complex resources and interesting and fun, it's all quote unquote downhill. Of course, it's still going to take a lot of time, but because sometimes with languages related to Spanish, like Italian, for example, right away I could understand simple content like cartoons, for example. So I started on my own. The thing is, I mean, when you understand a new language, it's always exciting. But let's put it this way, cartoons are not the most interesting resource when it comes to adults. I mean, at least for me, but like I said, it's still exciting because you get to understand a new language. So that's always good. But once I got to a point in which I could understand more complex resources like documentaries or even series later on down the road, it's all about just getting comprehensible input by, again, reading books, watching series, listening to music, whatever it is that you enjoy. And sometime in the future, you're going to start communicating.
That's right.
But you're enjoying every single minute of it, which is key to me, because I keep saying it, like, if you're not enjoying the process, sooner or later, you're going to give up.
Yeah, so true. Yeah.
And the problem is the traditional grammar approach is so dominant all over the world that for most people, that's the only thing they know. And back to my example with Polish, that's the only thing I knew. But the difference was so high when it comes to my native language in Polish that it was actually the thing that made me click, right? But it was a nightmare. Like, how am I going to learn this language this way? There's no way.
Did you find the fact that you're living in Poland actually helped?
Well, at the beginning, I'm thinking about it. It might be the opposite at the beginning, because it's just not comprehensible that you might actually get discouraged.
So how long did it take to turn around?
So it was a while. So first of all, and my first year here, I was it's called Erasmus in Europe, which is an exchange program for college students. So you basically go to a different country in Europe to study for a year. But then the classes were in English. We were, it was an international atmosphere with students from different countries. So I just learned the basic words like, hi, give me 3 of those. A couple of curse words here and there, of course. But I never really attempted to learn the language. So it was later on that I came back. Sorry. So after that year, I came back to Spain, but then I came back to Poland again because I loved it. And then I signed up for those classes that I just mentioned. And at the beginning, I was motivated because I was living in the country. So I would try to use those words in the street. But the problem is, I would sort of memorize specific sentences or words, and I would try to use them, I don't know, with taxi drivers or with people.
I totally relate to that.
The problem is, when they said something in return, okay.
Yes.
So I was just, oh, what a wonderful weather we have today. I'm just making it up. I would just say that. And they would say something in return, and you pay attention to whether that's a question or not. And if it's not a question, you're just like, you're fine. But if you notice there's a question tone to it, you just freak out because you have no idea what to say.
Yes. Yeah.
So, I mean, the thing about those classes is, here and there, with some story here and there, you get to acquire a little bit. It's just so inefficient, right? But you might get to get something. But then, then I had a Polish girlfriend. That helped, of course. And then also I started playing soccer with Polish friends. And the good thing about sports is, because most of the times everyone was Polish except for me. So they would use Polish during the game. I remember the first times I was playing, I just didn't know how to ask for the ball or things like the most. I was like, But the good thing about sports is it's sort of a TPR related experience. Because just to give you an example that I normally use, I'm getting the ball, and I hear one of my teammates say a specific word, and I notice there's an opponent right behind me. Oh, so that probably means watch out, or
yes, exactly. Yeah.
So it's like a TPR related experience. So it's easier to connect those ideas. So that helped me, but it was really slow, and until again I got to a point in which I started watching cartoons like Peppa Pig, like the most simple thing you can think of. And obviously back then I didn't know about comprehensible input and so on. It wasn't until my fourth year in Poland that I started doing my homework on that. So then because I knew a little bit, after all those experiences that I just mentioned, that I started reading comic books, watching cartoons.
Yes. Yeah.
But it was long. It was long.
Yes.
But now I've gotten to a point in which I can communicate. Of course, there's still a lot of room for improvement, but I can communicate, and I can watch. I can even watch series I watch them with subtitles in Polish, of course. But I understand what's going on, and yeah, it's really pleasant.
Yes.
The thing is, looking backwards, I would probably have learned the language much quicker if I knew about comprehensible input right from the get, because I would have tried to find a teacher, right?
Yeah.
To sort of walk me through and get me to that point that we were just talking about, without the hassle of having to consciously memorize things. So,
yes.
But right now I just realized that we can learn any language and enjoy the process every single moment.
Yes, it is enjoyable, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's more and more projects for different languages. So even if you're trying to learn a quote unquote less popular language, I mean, just like your dear Indonesian, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You're gonna be able to find projects or or just find a language teacher online, or or even like a language partner that you can.
Yeah. I'm very fortunate in that I work now in a team of 4, and 2 of the team are native Indonesian speakers. So yes, it's wonderful. So our meetings are largely held in Indonesian because it's the language that we can speak freely in, and nobody else in the faculty, nobody else in the area, the staff room speaks, so we can speak quite openly, and it's very handy.
Any topic you want to.
Exactly. Yeah, it's wonderful. Yeah.
And do you have any language in mind that you'd like to learn, or that you're looking to learn, or?
I would really like to continue, or not continue, that's probably the wrong word, but improve my Spanish. That's probably the one language I would love to. That's always been the language I've wanted to learn. I will do it one day. Probably. I'm still teaching, so until at this stage, it's not a high priority for me. I think it'd be something I'd love to do in my retirement. I think that rather than to learn another language, there's a high need for Indonesian TPRS, TCI materials to be created, because there's absolutely nothing really, certainly nothing published. So that's where I see, if I'm going to use my extra energy, that would be where I'd like to focus.
Like helping the future generation of teachers, right?
Yes, because we're quite isolated here in Australia. To get to either to the States or to Europe is a major undertaking. And oftentimes the conferences run during our school terms, because we run with the calendar year, unlike the Northern Hemisphere that runs with the breaks over summer, whereas that's our winter. So it's really it's a financial expense, but also it's a double financial expense, because you've got to pay for the airfare and the conference, but you've also got to either use your leave up or go take leave without pay to attend. So it's actually, so hence not many Australians have got over there. So it'd be wonderful to actually have something here that's, that caters for, because we've got lots and lots of teachers here who have attended the conferences we've run and they're really keen, but due to COVID, we haven't been able to run another one. And they're all like at different varying points now of, you know how it is when you first get started, and if you don't have that access to quality training and really good mentors, you tend to just, your understanding of it just weakens, and then before you know it, you're back teaching the way that the way you were taught. So so that's where I would really like to focus, is supporting those teachers.
So you mean materials to help teachers?
Well, basically for teachers to use with students.
Right.
So resources. I mean, ultimately, I'd love to publish a novel in Indonesian, because there is no TCI novels. There's the novels that we get from Indonesia are incredibly incomprehensible. They're full of very low frequency language that is not really helpful.
You can start your YouTube channel just like Anne with Spanish. But with
I've got a YouTube channel.
Okay.
And I used to have 10,000 what are they called, subscribers.
Okay.
Because I had a viral video. And have you heard of Bluey?
Of
Bluey.
Bluey?
Bluey. Bluey is an Australian children's cartoon which has taken off globally. And the same week that Disney Plus bought the rights to the first season, I put on my YouTube channel just a funny Bluey video. And it went viral, and I ended up getting 10,000 subscribers.
Okay, nice.
The videos had 17, I don't know, some ridiculous number of views. But Bluey's very popular. And as far as videos, children's cartoons or animations to watch, that is a fabulous one. But I think, not quite sure, but it's only on Disney Plus, I think. Anyway, where was I going with that? Yes, so I've got my own YouTube channel.
And you have stories there, or?
Beg your pardon?
Do you have stories in Indonesian on your channel?
I do. I put up parallel stories. So I have a blog as well. I'm not quite sure if you know. So my blog is specifically aimed at supporting TCI teachers, mostly. I mean, they're not all Indonesian teachers, but mostly Indonesian. And the blog just really chronicles my journey, I like to think, of being a TCI teacher, but also sharing what's worked for me, what's been successful. And usually I upload videos to my YouTube channel that have worked for me as well, so that the other teachers can use them, but also so that my students can access them in out of school time. So it's specifically aimed at supporting teachers and students with language.
I'll leave the link to your channels, like the YouTube channel and the blog.
That'd be cool. Yeah.
Nice. I didn't know that. That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
I'll take a look at it, see if I can pick up some Indonesian.
Well, it'll be funny to see more if you recognize the stories, because they're based on well-known TCI stories that I've just translated into Indonesian.
Okay.
I'm trying to think what one of them is. A lot of Jim Tripp stories that we've found that have worked well. He's been very generous, actually, supporting us with our trying, because Indonesian doesn't actually translate so smoothly, because we don't have, I mean, we have more cognates than Mandarin, thankfully, but it's still not as incredible as Spanish.
Right.
So we have to, it does take a lot of tweaking to get the language to actually work in a meaningful way.
Right.
Yeah.
I was thinking that I think I still remember from the first time I went to Ajan, which
Uh-huh.
which was 2016.
Okay.
Annie Beach went there,
Yep.
and she did a little demo in Indonesian.
She did.
I still
Yes.
remember the word for butterfly, kupu kupu,
Oh,
right?
you do. That's, oh, she'll be thrilled.
Because I have it in my head. I'm picturing Annie's
Yes.
face and the gesture she did.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Kupu kupu.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because, oh, I thought I can. I'm not sure now, but I can remember the word for in Breton from when I was there with Daniel, for stranger. I think it was oh, now I can see it in my head. I can't pronounce it anymore. But if you said it, I would recognize it. But yeah, it's amazing, isn't it, how you have that one word that sticks in your head. Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, Annie's retired, so she's moved. She's not teaching Indonesian anymore.
Yeah, it's the combination of, the story, the teacher, the gesture, combination of different factors.
And the repetitions, yeah.
Oh, of course, yeah. But that was like 10-15 minute demo. That was it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and it was late at night, because wasn't it when you, what was it called?
Yeah, it was in the afternoon, evenings. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Annie was telling me about it, how it took her a long time to actually get the courage to get up and to do it. But then she was regretting that she hadn't done it earlier, because then she could have done it again.
Yeah, because she was a wonderful teacher. And, yeah.
Isn't she? She is a wonderful teacher, for sure. Yeah.
And one other question, like when you start with your students for the first time, because again, back to your point, it's not like Spanish or French that you can have more cognates and words that you recognize. So how do you go about it? Do you start with storytelling right away when you have complete beginners, or?
I do. I start with Jim's trip story. It's always the first one I tell, and it's funny because, or not tell, but focus on. It's funny because all of us are in the same boat, all of us Indonesian teachers down here, in that we all start off with a brand new cohort who knows nothing. And most people don't do this story, but I love it. I love the place to meet you story, where, it's so-and-so. I usually start off with, so the structures are basically, who are you? My name is, what is it? And said, I think that's basically what it is. So, so-and-so's, I usually say, so-and-so's at McDonald's. So what I do is I use the familiar place for my students, which is McDonald's, and the language that's in it, there's two words, there's in and from in the story. And I just say those in English, because I don't see the point in, I'm very much, one of the things I really I believe strongly in is cognitive overload. And so I'm always stressing that you avoid that. And if necessary, then you use the English word, so that that there's no confusion and no, so it supports comprehension. So it's usually, someone's at McDonald's, someone else is at McDonald's, but the someone else is always the classroom teacher, their classroom. So the cohort that I'm teaching. So it might be Batman at McDonald's, and then Mrs. Jackson's at McDonald's. And then, Batman says, hello, my name is Batman. What's your name? And Mrs. Jackson says, hello, Batman. My name is Mrs. Jackson. And he says, Mrs. Jackson from the school that you're teaching. Oh, my goodness gracious me, autograph. And, it's so you can see how simple it is. And yet it uses really important language in an Indonesian context with my name is and what's your name, and said. So which comes up all the time. So that's the story I start off with.
Right. So it's like real life context, right? And then characters or situations they're familiar with, being that your colleague or McDonald's and so on.
That's right.
And then I guess when you talked about, oh my God, you just go ahead and sign it.
Yep.
So a lot of gestures and real life and objects and
Yep. And there's a lot of English to support it, because it's all about it's not only about learning the language, but it's also about learning the process of being in a TCI classroom or a TPRS classroom, because there's a lot of protocol and process. You know, the actors have to know that they have to be, you know, they have to act and engage, you know, be engaging and be entertaining. They have to know that they can't ad lib. They've got to stick to the script and only do what I say. And I forgot what, there's a third thing, but I forgot what it is. But so it's all about, it's quite an intensive program when you first start, because you're teaching language, you're teaching how a TCI classroom goes, because it is like nothing they've ever experienced before. Even most lessons, you know, non-language lessons are so formal, and everyone sits down and, you know, at a table and just is shush. Whereas here I'm saying, you know, it's really clever to call out an Indonesian, and they're like, what? Calling out Indonesian? Yeah, don't call it out in English, call out in Indonesian. That's clever. You know, all of this, you know, it's just, it's quite a flip on their understanding of what learning is like. So there's a lot of learning, if you like, in that first story that you do.
Yeah, and they get to move around, and like the other classes, and yeah,
there's a lot of moving around. In fact, I did a lot of TPR, and because I'm now only working with pre-literate students, which are students that have emerging literacy levels, and most of them don't have any literacy, don't read or write. So so it's a very active program that I do, and some teachers stay in the classroom while I'm working with it, and I think they really struggle with the movement, because there's a lot of movement, and there's a lot of talking and a lot of, you know, loud noise, and they find that quite challenging. And I actually had one teacher last week actually say, shh. And I felt like saying, what? I tell my kids to be quiet in my lesson. It was quite funny. Luckily, the kids ignored her.
The instinct.
Yes, turn it down, you're too loud. And I'm like, no, they're not, they're perfect.
The kids, they're supposed to be loud, right? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Cool.
Yeah, so I'm really enjoying working with pre-literate students. I'm actually in the middle of writing a blog post about it, because it would have to be the most challenging cohort to work with on it, I think, in any language, because it's probably the cohort of learners who have the least amount of anything ready, you know, for teachers. Because if you think about the majority of conferences and workshops are aimed at secondary and tertiary, and the secondary level 8 students, you know, if they come down to about year 5. Sometimes you're lucky, you might get a year 4 sort of program or suggestion, but there is very, very little available for the pre-literate cohort, and there is 0 for Indonesian teachers of that cohort. And I just saw today that Erica Burge, I think her name is, has just had her, she's going to be presenting at ATFL, doing pre-literate, you know, activities for pre-literate learners. She's called it Herding Kittens, which I think is the perfect name for it. And I'm thinking, wow, that's so exciting that at ATFL there's going to be a dedicated workshop finally for teachers of pre-literate students. It's pretty exciting.
Right, because there's a new set of things that you need to consider, right? Because I mean, obviously I teach adults, so it's just completely different, because they're just like me teaching adults and teaching Spanish, which is, there are a lot of cognates between Spanish and English. So there's just so much more that I can get away with because of that. And then, you know, my students, they're sitting down and paying attention for an hour, you know, while kids need to move around. So
that's right.
Like,
and so my students can sit for 5 or 10 minutes at a push. So very short chunks, and there's no point doing a point and pause because they can't read it. You know, so you've got the language is 90% oral. You know, the input is all oral. Whereas you think of an adult class or an upper primary, early secondary class, there's language everywhere and the kids can refer to it if they need it. And that's just not an option for pre-literate students. It's a totally different ballgame.
Yeah, and the knowledge of the words is so much higher when adults and high school students, or you can use a lot of real life examples to help them understand what you're talking about.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
But the good thing, on the other hand, I'm thinking about is, well, obviously pre-literates, they don't have any prejudices, if you will, when it comes to, I need to consciously study that. No, they haven't been programmed yet. And
that's so true.
Right. And I guess it's closer to the experience of just teaching your kid your native language.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. Oh, they're a wonderful bunch to work with. They're so enthusiastic. They will do anything for you. So if you want to volunteer, you actually hurt their feelings when you don't choose them. It's like, not with secondary, you're flat out getting, well, with year 8s last year anyway, I was flat out getting 1 or 2 people to volunteer, and it would be the same people all the time to be the actors, because whereas it's the total flip side of that. It's so good. And they're inclusive as well. They're kind to each other. It's so nice. It's really lovely. And they're just a beaut bunch to work with.
Yeah, like high schoolers are already thinking about what the other person is going to think if I volunteer.
Absolutely. Yeah. The best thing about it is there's no hormones. That's what I love about it, because after working with year 6, 7 and 8s last year, I just thought, I need a break from these hormonal teenagers who are just, life is so crazy for them that it's very unpleasant.
Yeah, I understand. And also, I guess for you as a teacher, it's way easier to focus on the message as well, because that's what I mean when you're teaching your students. Because if you're teaching high schoolers, you may have the, what's the word? Not the tendency, but
flexibility. No.
I mean that because you're pre-literate students, they obviously don't care about about form or specific structures. You don't even, it's not even in for you, right? But when it comes to
output
students in high school, you might have I can't think of the word, not the tendency, but you might think about giving them some grammar here and there because you think it's going to help them. Obviously it's not, but I can think of the word. Anyway, you understand what I mean?
I do understand what you mean.
With 4 or 5 year olds, you would never think about, okay, so this is present tense or whatever. You just want them to understand what you're talking about. You just want to communicate with them.
That's right. The focus is totally on communication. Yeah. And they never worry about what they look like. In fact, the crazier they look, the happier they are. So you can,
right.
And they respond so well to really quirky, crazy, funny, stories, images. Yeah, they're so easy to engage. They're highly motivated.
Yeah, but I think it's a good example for adults, like for teaching adults. I mean, obviously, again, because so we understand comprehensible input is the way, right? But still here and there, we have the tendency, again, for lack of a better word, to give them some grammar explanation here and there, right?
Yeah.
And that's not helping them.
We can't help ourselves. Yes. Yeah. It's almost automatic that you want to explain it. But
right, exactly.
Yeah. However, I think, I can't remember who it was. It could have been someone like Laurie Clark, basically, when she said, basically, that you're right where you're supposed to be. So if you know that you want to ask and understand that grammar point, you will ask it. And so in my head, I'm always saying, well, if the kids don't ask me, I'm not going to tell them. For example, in Indonesian, there's 2 no words. There's no if it's a noun, and then there's another no word for everything else. So I use them I try and use them correctly, and I can't say I'm wonderful 100% of the time in a classroom context. But, you know, in all that time, I think I've had 2 kids ask me why there's 2 no words. Everybody else, it's just water off a duck's back, because they're not at the point where they need to know, hey, why did you use bukan at that point and tidak in another context? And so, yeah.
And the funny thing is, actually, we don't need to know either. It just
no, we don't.
We have the conscious ability to pay attention to that.
Exactly. It sounds right.
No, but I guess because of our experience with the traditional grammar approach, and we've been programmed for that. We want to know, like, we consciously want to know, why did you use that, or why did you do that, and why do you use no for in two different ways? But that's just like a short-term way to sort of calm us down.
It is a short term. You're right.
It's actually hurting you.
Yes, that's so true.
So as a teacher, you feel better because you feel like you're helping them, and they feel better because they feel like they understand what's going on, but it's not helping anybody.
No, if anything, you've just added to the cognitive load. It's funny.
Exactly.
Yeah. And, you know, the best thing about learning Indonesian is that native Indonesian speakers are so grateful that you're learning their language. Then if you use the wrong no in the wrong context, they're not going to say, they're not going to point the finger at you and laugh. They're just going to be, oh, that's amazing, you're speaking Indonesian. You know, you just have to say one sentence in Indonesian and they're like, oh, you're so fluent. They're really, really encouraging. They're just so impressed that you're making an effort. So why do you have to know? Why is it important that they know why you use different no's? It's, as long as they're negating, that's the most important thing. And it's comprehensible. The meaning's clear.
Correct. Yeah, and it even feels that way for us who, quote unquote, have a more popular language as a native language. So, I mean, when someone tries to use Spanish with me, I appreciate it, you know?
Absolutely.
So I can't imagine what it feels like for them, because I guess they're not used to foreigners trying to learn Indonesian, right?
That's true. That's really true. Yeah.
All right. So any other thing that you have in mind that we didn't touch on, or?
Well, I think we've covered a really broad range of topics here tonight.
Yeah. And so I'll link, I'll post, I'll list all the links that you told me about, your YouTube channel and your blog as well.
That's the main 2 things. Yeah.
People interested in learning Indonesian, that would be that might be a good start.
Yes. I have had people contact me, you know, asking if I could teach them Indonesian, but I'm more interested in supporting supporting TCI teachers. I will make time to support TCI teachers of Indonesians in Australia. In fact, anywhere really, but mainly in Australia. But I'm not, teaching Indonesian is more a retirement job for me when I'm more flexible. So, but if anybody wants to ask me questions, or especially if they've read something on my blog or they've looked at one of my videos and they've got questions and on any aspect, they can always get in contact with me. And obviously, all those contact details are, I think, basically, you can contact me through the blog, or you can contact me on Facebook. You know, obviously I'm just Boo Cathy, so that's who you can contact me through that as well.
Perfect. All right, so thank you so much, Cathy.
Oh, thank you.
It's wonderful.
It's been wonderful. I've really thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's been the case for me. Like, I'm really enjoying this. I think it's helpful, super helpful for listeners, that because they get to, because we all have similar ideas. I mean, we all believe comprehensible input is the way, because that's the way we all acquire a native language. It's not that we're coming out with a crazy idea, right? but we all have our different resources that we use, or different takes on it, or even the different languages that we teach. So I had Diane from the US, and she teaches Mandarin Chinese. So there's little nuances here and there that are going to help. Or even if you're interested in learning that specific language, that specific episode is going to help you.
Absolutely, yeah.
And the most important thing, I'm enjoying them so much.
Yes. Oh, it's great. It's wonderful. It's good to get to know all the TCI practitioners around the world and touch base.
Spread the word. All right.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cathy.
And thank you for being so flexible about our start times and dates and so forth.
There's always when there's a time difference, there's always the possibility of mixing things up.
Absolutely. Common.
Thanks, Cathy. And
all right. Thank you. Thank you. And all the best.
Same for you. Bye-bye.
Okay. See you later. Bye-bye.